I work for a commercial cleaning company who specializes in cleaning up rundown, abandoned buildings and getting them ready for refurbishment. We were hired to clean out an old hospital that had been abandoned for some 20-odd years. My team, of which there were 3 of us, was assigned to the behavioral health unit, or more simply, the psych ward. While I was clearing out rooms of dusty old linens and mattress pads, I found an old marble journal tucked under one of the pads. I opened it and flipped through quickly and saw that it was about half filled with journal entries. I thought it was pretty cool, so I slid it in my back pocket so I could read it later and went back to work. Totally forgot about it until I got in the car and drove home. When I got home, I decided to read it, and what I found inside was terrifying, mostly because of the similarities between what was in the journal and what we'd been cleaning up earlier today. I'll go over the connections between what I found in the journal and what I saw today later, but before that, let me share the story. I'm going to try and stay as true to the writing in the journal as possible, so that means some things may be a little misspelled and some grammar might not be perfect. If it's underlined on the page, I'll underline it here. Written all in caps, I'll type it all in caps. So, let's get started. Day 1, 12 p.m. The ER nurse lied to me. She said I could leave after 3 days. The doctor here, though, she said she decides when I leave. She said I won't be out in 3 days. I don't want to be here. I don't belong here. Day 2, 11 a.m. I've been here 24 hours. I don't want to be here. I don't belong here. They do patient checks every 15 minutes. If you're in your room, they knock on the door. They don't care about the time. I can't sleep. They give me my meds and they say that I have mood stabilizers in them for me tonight. I miss Taya. I miss my bed. This is my world now. Day 3, 11 a.m. It's been 42 hours. I'm feeling a little better. I broke down last night. I played some Monopoly earlier and it was a lot of fun. After I broke down, I was given meds to calm me down. I laughed for the first time since coming here. Day 5. I'm okay. I'll be okay. Day 7. It's time to go home. They won't let me leave. I don't know why. I ask and they ignore me. Just want to go home. Day 10. There was a huge boom outside. None of the nurses reacted. They just carried on as normal. All I can see out the window is black smoke. Day 14. We found a nurse in the hallway this morning. He was dead. We've been seeing less and less each day, but since we found him, we haven't seen anyone else. Day 27. There hasn't been a single nurse or doctor or security or anyone at all since we found the nurse in the hallway. The door knocking hasn't stopped, though. Every 15 minutes, if a room door is closed, it will knock. Food still shows up. Meds are still showing up in the medicine window. Day 28. Gerald tried to jump through the window at the nurse's station. Something we couldn't see stopped him and dragged him back out. He was dragged all the way to the quiet room. We hesitantly followed and watched as he was hauled up into a slab bed. We watched the straps wrap themselves around him and tie him down. Then the room door slammed shut. That was this morning. It's almost lights out. We could still hear him screaming. Poor guy. I guess security is still here. Day 32. It's been over a month. We put the body of the nurse in Gerald's room, since he doesn't need it anymore. Gerald's still wrapped up down the hall in the quiet room. He's still screaming. I don't know how. Out the window is just smoke. Large, rolling, jet black columns of smoke, painting the sky a large swath of uncolor. We're still fed. I don't know where it comes from, but it always shows up at the end of the hallway and wheels itself down to us. Day whatever. It's been a while. A lot's happened. A lot of lights have stopped working. The knocking never does. Some of the windows have cracks in them. Don't know how. None of us could even scratch them. There's no more outside. It's just black. The smoke took over the sky weeks ago. I'm really not sure about time. Haven't seen natural light since. We only know days because the lights, what few we have left, dim for a bit every few hours or so. The water stopped getting hot a few days ago. With the lights, the windows, and now the water, it's almost like this place is dying. Gerald stopped screaming eventually. Still strapped down. We can see him moving from time to time, so we know he's alive. Don't know how he survives, but I do know that none of us want to piss off whatever's doing this. I don't even know. We have to get out of here. Doris went into her room and the door closed behind her. It won't open. Something unseen dragged her to the bed and held her there. We watched as the bed made itself with her in it. That wouldn't have been so bad, except that when it was done, Doris was just a red smear between the sheets and the bed. There's not even a bulge where her body should be. She's just gone. The door stayed closed ever since. No one's brave enough to go in their room now. We're all just staying in the day room for now. Been a few days. I lost this book for a bit. It's not that strange. Sometimes stuff just goes missing here. We just assume it's the housekeepers that got it. Strange part is that I found it in Gerald's room, next to the body of the nurse. Now, he's just a semi-wet pile of meat and bones. No idea why that room won't clean itself. Lost a couple other folks to housekeepers. That's what we call what happened to Doris. Maybe we'll try to look in Gerald's room for more stuff we lost. Day after last entry. It was a bad idea. The nurse wasn't dead. I don't know how it could be. It was literally just a pile of meat and bones. And yet, we were in Gerald's room looking for lost stuff. Ron bumped the nurse's body and it jumped at him. It dug its bone fingers into his neck. A wet squelching noise accompanied it every moment. Ron strangled, gurgled, screamed, but he quickly stopped. I'm ashamed to say that we ran. We left him there, with the nurse thing still digging away at his neck. We closed and barricaded the door. I don't know anymore. It's been a few days. I can still hear the nurse thing moving around in Gerald's room. Every now and again we hear wet slaps against the floor. The flies are terrible. Clark got taken by the housekeepers. A window broke out of nowhere. It just shattered. Some of the smoke came in, just a little bit. It's like a creeping miasma. It slithered its way across the ceiling and just sat there. We used a table to block the window and keep any more smoke from getting in. Now we're just watching it. Tay, who cares? We need to leave. Ginny decided to touch the smoke, and it grabbed her like a snake. A thin trail came out and coiled itself around her outstretched arm and down her body and dragged her into itself. It's unthinkable how such a small amount of smoke could consume somebody like that. I say consumed because that's what it did. It ate her. Not all at once, and not quickly. We tried to save her, tried to drag her back down to us. Even with all of us pulling, we couldn't get her to budge. I think I heard something in her pop, or break, or dislocate when we were pulling. But we couldn't save her, so we had to watch. We had to watch as it slowly pulled her into itself. There was no noise, except for Ginny's screeches and screams, but it did eat her, eventually. I don't think I'll ever forget her screams. We stay away from it now. It stays on the ceiling, moving around, but never comes down. We're now living in fear of yet another unexplained thing. Too long. The nurse, No idea. Was he ever dead? Was he ever even human? Gerald is not dead somehow, but he's still strapped down. Doris, housekeeping. Aspen, housekeeping. Donald, housekeeping. Ron, the nurse thing. Jenny, eaten by the smoke. Daniel, eaten by the smoke. We're leaving. We've lost too many people to just sit here trying to survive. We've unblocked the window and hopped out. There's a small landing with an access hatch and a half-story below. I'm leaving this book here as a way to ensure that we're not forgotten. If you find this, I didn't live to come back for it. Goodbye. Note: this journal was found in the room of a mental patient who jumped out of his window to his death. I came back. I didn't write that. I don't know who did, but it wasn't me. I found this journal right where I left it. It's just me now. We didn't even make it out of the hospital. I came back because I'd rather die here, where at least I'm taken care of. We were exploring the hospital for about a week, I'd say. This place hasn't changed much. The black smoke is still here. It moves around the ceiling, following me. I feel like it's watching me, like a predator watching its prey. Not actively hunting, but just waiting for any little slip up so it can bag itself an easy meal. It won't be from me. I guess I should explain what happened and how everyone died. When we left, there were still 6 of us. Me, Jules, Richard, Alberto, Gwen, and Ray. I don't know what we expected to find when we left, but there was no way for us to guess what we saw. Narrator's note: the entire next page is full of scribbled out bits. Just woke up from a nap. Something more is going on. I took a nap after writing that last page, and when I woke up, I saw it was completely scribbled out. I didn't do that. I guess something didn't like what I had to say. I can't even remember what I wrote, honestly. I can't remember most of yesterday. This place hurts to be in. Hurts to think about. It just hurts. Good news, though. The food still shows up. It's been 2 days. I guess I'll try again to write down what happened when I left. Outside the window was a small drop down to an access hatch. We quickly filed out and fell down. I couldn't help but notice no more smoke made its way through the window. Even now, sitting here writing this, I don't have the window blocked. Doesn't much make a difference, if I'm honest. There's no weather. There's no wind. Everything is still. I don't hear any animals or bugs. No cars, no people. Just silence. The world is so empty. Back to what happened. We hopped down to the access shaft. We managed to open it and drop down to the floor below. I'd tell you what floor number, but I honestly don't know. When we hopped down, we were in a hallway. It was long and semi-lit. I guess the rest of the hospital was falling apart, just like our unit. Half the lights were either flickering dimly or just out. Still enough light to see what we were going through. The hallway had elevators on one side and a few rooms on the other. The rooms were labeled Radiology 1, 2, 3, and so on. Throughout the entire hallway was a low humming and beeping, the sound of medical equipment left on. Being all too familiar with house cleaning, we didn't dare go into any of the rooms. Gwen wanted to take the elevator, but the rest of us said no. There's no telling what horror that would lead to. Once we got our bearings, we chose a direction and started walking. It was dark. I could barely see the floor. I guess that's why we didn't notice at first. When we did notice, we were too terrified to move. We'd been walking for maybe 10 minutes. The hallway just went on and on. Every now and again we would pass a sign with an arrow and the word visitation on it, pointing the way we were going. Occasionally, we would come to a large intersection with multiple hallways leading off. It was in one of these intersections we noticed what was around us. All over the walls were semi-dark stains, the color of dried blood. Everywhere on the floor we found wet piles of rotting meat and bones, like our nurse thing. It's amazing how we didn't smell it, but once we noticed, it was all we could smell. It was horrible. Just thinking about it makes me want to puke, even now. Sorry, I had to go throw up. Caught a whiff of the smell. I didn't want to think about where it came from. Richard and Jules, we were stood in the intersection, surrounded by potential monsters. We had no idea how long these things could last like this. Hell, they were literally half rotted. Once we found our nerve, we decided to move on. It's honestly a miracle we hadn't bumped into a pile of them by now. Our luck couldn't last forever, though. In the dark confines of a particularly tight hallway, Richard lost his balance and ended up stepping on a meat pile. It instantly rose up and swallowed him. More an amorphous blob of meat and bones than anything resembling a human. His scream was quick, but loud. Loud enough to wake the dead. Unfortunately, that's not just an expression. Apparently, noise also sets them off. 2 more of the meat blobs suddenly launched themselves at the closest person. Jules was gone in an instant. The blobs fully enclosed her before she could even scream. Richard was a bit slower. We watched as whatever bones the blob had forced their way into and through him. A long bone through the neck, what looked like maybe fingers digging into his guts. A couple of ribs into his thigh. On and on. We watched in horror for what felt like hours, too scared to move. When he finally stopped moving, we managed to collect our senses and run. Gwen. A few days later, we had moved a few floors down via the staircase. We were never able to take one the entire way. There was always a blockage forcing us out into the hospital proper. Through more halls and rooms, we weren't sure that we could make it out. Gwen was leading us through the hall. She took a turn, and all we heard was the faintest squeak. Then nothing. We waited around the corner for a while before carefully peeking our heads out. About a foot from where the wall turned into a massive wall of black smoke. Floor to ceiling, wall to wall. There was no way through. Gwen must have walked right into it, gone before she even realized it. Poor kid. Ray had the worst fate of anyone, except maybe Gerald. Ray was leading the remains of our group, just Alberto, me, and Ray, through the kitchen. This was about a day after Gwen, and we were walking through the kitchen, past stoves and burners and rotten food. Ray saw something on the counter, I still don't know what, and reached for it. His hand was cut in half, all 4 fingers gone to the knuckle. Next, the skin on his arm was peeled off, like skin on a fish. He watched his arm get sliced into small sections, unable to move. Alberto and I tried to pull him away, but we couldn't. After his arm, Ray was haphazardly thrown onto the counter, and the rest of his body was cut up, prepared like meat at a butcher shop. Saw a few pieces get flung into a pot on the stove before Albert and I ran while the cooking went to work on the rest of Ray. I skipped my meals the next few days after I got back, just in case. Alberto was just unlucky. After what happened to Ray, we decided to go back to our unit. It was all too much. Alberto and I quickly backtracked. A few days later, we found a staircase that said, "To BHU Psych." We were almost back. Running up the stairs, Alberto didn't notice a blob on the next step up. Stepped right on it. Of course, it launched itself onto him. It ended up tackling Alberto over the railing and down into the empty central column of the staircase. They fell, Alberto and the blob. They fell what must have been 10 stories. Of course, we couldn't have been that high up. I watched them tumble down, the blob ripping chunks out of him. Then I noticed what was at the bottom. a roiling, bubbling, almost boiling pool of black smoke. All the way down, Alberto and the blob were plummeting towards it. He fell quietly. The meat blob fell in, and everything was the opposite of silence. How I got back. I guess these things don't like each other. When the meat blob fell into the black smoke, at first there was a blinding light. I can't describe the color. It was beyond white. That's all that comes into my mind when I try to recall what it looked like. Beyond white is the best I can do. With the light came the noise. It was deafening. The sound of flies buzzing so loud I couldn't hear myself scream. I was lucky to open my eyes quickly enough to see the black smoke rocketing up towards me. I quickly threw myself back against the wall as the smoke shot up past me and continued on upwards, filling the central column. I admit it took me longer than I'm proud of to regain control of myself. The light, the noise, the powerful wind from the rush of smoke. It was almost too much. I felt the smoke glaring at me. It was angry. It wanted to eat. But it was hurt. If I was more of an action hero, I would maybe do something with that information. But I'm not. So I ran. I ran up the stairs as fast as I could. I ran through the door marking floor 3. I ran through the halls, following the signs for the BHU, thanking whatever power above that all these doors were unlocked. I crashed through the twin doors leading back to where this all started. I collapsed onto the floor, finally feeling some semblance of safety. I don't know how long I was out for. I only realized after I woke up. All the doors that were unlocked, they all locked behind me as I ran. Now I'm stuck here again. It's been a few days, and I'm alone. Gerald's still here, of course, still strapped down. He's a little more than skin and bones now, but he's still moving. Water's still cold, window's still broken, smoke still follows me, food still rolls down the hall towards me. I did learn something through all of this, though. The realization of false hope is more damaging than no hope at all. So for now, I'll just live here with no hope of getting out. I'll be okay. That's the whole story. Pretty creepy if you ask me. When I was cleaning up earlier today, I noticed the ceiling was smudged with long black smoke stuff. Windows were cracked, with one window leading to an access hatch broken open. In the solitary holding room, I guess that's what they call the quiet room, there was one bed with its straps still tied down. Nothing on the bed, though. Few of the rooms had linen that were completely stained with something. Honestly, couldn't tell you what. Walking through the hospital, I also noticed a lot of stains on the floor. I can't say for certain, but I've had to clean up dead bodies before, and the stains in the hospital looked exactly like the kind of stains a body leaves when it's left to rot for a long time. After reading that, and comparing what happened in the journal with the kind of mess I found, I'm honestly considering calling out tomorrow. Maybe even just calling out for however long it takes to finish cleaning the hospital. You're still here. I thought you might be. Thanks for joining me for tonight's story. If your insatiable appetite for horror knows no bounds, might I suggest one of our playlists, or one of our previous stories in the archive? There should be one appearing at the end of the story any minute now. And of course, if you're not subscribed, why not go ahead and hit that subscribe button? Maybe hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of the spooky things that we do here. If you prefer your horror a little more analog, you can always pick up one of my books. There's a link below to my latest, and it'll take you to all the great things that I've posted on Amazon. For my book lovers in the audience, I always suggest coming on down to Patreon so you can become part of my ghostly reader tier and get a book anytime I write one, which is usually about twice a year. Speaking of my patrons, let's go ahead and thank them. Thanks to Janet for being our Spooky Skeleton tier contributor, and thanks to Hi Stacy, Winter, Xaronan, Emily Coltsfoot, Stephanie Carrington, Marianne Schuler, Tyler Parker, and Jennifer Damron for being our Ghostly Reader tier contributors. Thanks, everyone. We just couldn't do the show without you. If you're thinking you might like to become one of my patrons, follow the link below to my Patreon. And as always, however you support the show, I appreciate it. Till next time, Dr. Plague, signing off. Have a wonderful evening.